Hello, my name is Hasnaeen Rizvi Rahman. I'm a technologist and entrepreneur, and my today's talk is not about me. So, truth be told, with all the economic progresses that Bangladesh made in the last 10 years, it is still far from being called a technologically advanced country. Yet, I'm standing here in the outskirts of Rajshahi, far from the capital Dhaka, and I'll be talking about a phenomenon that I believe is going to fundamentally change the civilization as we know it in the next 20 years. That's a pretty bold statement, considering the thing that I'll be talking about is relatively new. But being a technologist myself and seeing the patterns of investments and innovation done on this thing, I know for a fact that this paradigm shift is inevitable. I'll be talking about Web3. Before we discuss what Web3 is and how it is going to impact our lives, we have to know how we ended up here. We have to know about its predecessors. In 1990, Sir Tim Berners-Lee developed the foundation of what he called the World Wide Web. This World Wide Web, or WWW, was very simple back then. We can call it Web 1.1, and it lasted approximately from 1991 to 2004. Most participants of Web 1.1 were consumers of the content, and the creators of the content were the developers who built the websites that had texts and images. Everything was static, nothing was dynamic. Content and data were stored on files instead of databases. We can think of Web 1.0 as the read-only web. The current iteration of the World Wide Web is Web 2.0, which emerged roughly from 2004. It's when the era of social and interactive web began. In Web 2.0, you don't have to be a developer to participate in the content creation process. Most apps and websites out there let you create and post content without having the knowledge of how these apps and websites work. Think of Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn. All these apps, there you can post content and instantly millions of people can see it, react to it, comment on it, and even share it. The web today has become a vast and intricate network of servers serving as the backbone of our society. Think of how internet affects our life on a daily basis. Think of how society has changed as a result of the internet in the last 20 years. Think of social media, streaming services, mobile apps. The internet today seems simple, beautiful, elegant, just perfect. Or is it? The internet was meant to democratize our world, giving the rights to information and privacy back to general people. But after 3 decades of its birth, we have realized that the opposite has happened. We have seen the rise of big tech companies and their domination on the web. Do you know that 45% of the total internet traffic flows through only 6 companies? They are Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Netflix. 87% of the global search engine traffic is controlled by Google and Google alone. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, now has user information of 3.6 billion people across its 4 platforms, which are Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram. Imagine this vast and tremendous amount of data is controlled, owned, and used to their advantages by this handful of companies. But wait, don't these companies offer free services? At least you don't have to pay to search on Google, right? Neither do you have to pay to open an account on Facebook. Then how do they sustain? You all know the answer. They sustain through targeted and personalized advertisements. They seem to know everything about us, our likes, dislikes, friends, food habits, favorite videos. They show you ads of products that you even didn't know you wanted, which leads to more clicks, which results in more ad revenues for them. So this centralization and exploitation of user data is the number one problem there is with Web 2.0. Then we have the privacy and security concerns. We often hear about data breaches, accounts getting hacked, passwords and credit card information getting stolen, and whatnot. You, my friend, have no control over your data, trust me. Companies can use your personal data for their benefit without your consent. There are and there were claims of companies selling personal data for their benefit. In Web 2.0, that's the current version of the web, we also have the problem of single point of failures. These days, businesses are so dependent on these big tech companies that on a given day, if they goes down, it takes everyone dependent on them down with it. And finally, we have the problem of censorship. Your right to free speech gets hampered when governments shut down servers and block access to services they don't want you to use. And since banks are all digital now and under centralized control, governments can intervene there and can shut down access to bank accounts or limit access to funds. It's time for a change. It's time to restore the power of individuals on the web. It's time for Web 3.0. But how do you fix something that is the current internet that is so heavily centralized? You do it by decentralizing it. And that's the core of Web 3.0. So Web 3.0 is the proposed new iteration of the World Wide Web. It's not an app, by the way. It's not a software. It's not an internet protocol. It's not a company. It's the idea how the new internet should be, fueled by some groundbreaking technologies. And the primary technology behind Web3 is blockchain. But the underlying mechanisms of blockchain can be very complex, so let me give you a summary of it. Traditionally, a software product is stored on a server. That's, I think, everyone knows. Usually, a centralized database is connected to it. So when you request for information to the software product using your web browser or mobile app, it retrieves the information from the database and sends it to your web. That's how all apps still work on Web 2.0. But Web 3 does it differently. So in 2008, an individual or a group of individuals called Satoshi Nakamoto proposed an ingenious solution of storing information over a distributed database. It's essentially a network of computers or nodes where no one computer acts as the master. So every computer in the network is responsible for storing the information of the entire network. Every computer of the network contributes to the computing power required. And every computer of the network handles the communication that occurs within the network. And there are more. So when new information is created, when a new information is created by a user or by an event, it is usually packaged as a block. Then the timestamp of creation and the cryptographic hash, which is like a password in layman's term, are applied on this block, and this block gets added to the chain of previously created blocks, and hence the name blockchain. This node, this chain of blocks is stored on all the computers of the network. When a block gets added to the chain, it stays there forever. There is no way of removing a block. You cannot delete it, you cannot edit it, you cannot tamper it. It's immutable. It's very similar to accounting system ledgers that log all the transactions that happen in a business, but in a more global scale. In blockchain, we also have algorithms and rules called smart contracts that validate transaction between two nodes or computers and addition of a new block. So that's blockchain in a nutshell. As we speak, as of today, there are several established blockchain networks out there, created and organized and managed by groups of individuals and organizations. Most notables two are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now let's talk about some of the impact areas that Web3 is going to have in our life. Number one, software application development and deployment. In Web 2, you build an app, you deploy it on a server or on a group of servers. The app talks to a database to retrieve and fetch data and write data. In Web 3, developers will not have to worry about any of this. They will not have to worry about servers and databases. Web 3 applications are built on a blockchain network, which itself runs on a distributed network of peer-to-peer nodes. It's very fundamentally different from regular Web 2 application development process. Web 3 apps are often referred to as dApps or DApps, which is an abbreviation of decentralized apps. Number two impact area is your identity on the web. I have an account on Facebook, another one on Twitter, another one on Google, and on a number of other platforms. And the most common method of the login procedure involves using an email address and a password, right? Everyone knows. Since I use 20 different platforms, I have 20 different passwords. And I use an app to manage my passwords. How hectic and flawed. On top of that, many of these platforms or services, they actually fetch and store your personal information, like your location, when you log in. Seen that little cookie notice when you visit a site, right? It's very common these days. Web3 offers us having only one unique identity to use all apps in the blockchain or dApps. It's like a global single sign-on. And since everyone knows everyone, or all the transactions are usually public on blockchain network, any user can see the data and the assets on an individual's wallet. But the beauty is this individual can remain anonymous without revealing his personal information. It's like knowing someone called Morpheus has 1 billion Bitcoins, but we don't know who this Morpheus is. Of course, at any given point of time, any user can choose to reveal his information on his wallet, and that will reveal on the network. So there is this freedom. Number 3 impact area is the payments and the future of money. In Web3, when you provide a service, people pay you using tokens instead of real money. tokens are virtual currencies powered by blockchain masala. So in Web3, consumers spend tokens and providers earn tokens. Tokens are often called cryptocurrencies, by the way, you know. They are robust, secure, and native to blockchains. Question is, how are they different from real money? And why are they more efficient? Imagine purchasing a fancy watch on Amazon.com and you decide to pay using your credit card. Let's analyze what happens inside. So you authorize the website, which is Amazon, to charge your card by entering your sensitive and personal billing information. Then the website talks to the payment gateway, which then talks to the credit card company, which then talks to the bank. It's a very complex chain of events that occur for a simple transaction nowadays. Additionally, every intermediary, like the credit card company or the payment gateway, keeps a commission for themselves in the transaction. So you are buying something, the watch, they are getting a part of your money. In Web3, forget about all this. When you pay something using cryptocurrency, the tokens go directly from your wallet to the vendor. No intermediaries, no bleeding money. Let's talk about another use case. It's one of the biggest contributors of our economy. I'm talking about foreign remittance. Bangladesh received a staggering 25 billion USD as remittance in 2021 alone. Our hardworking workers working abroad send this money to their families in Bangladesh. Imagine a Bangladeshi worker called Salam working in Saudi Arabia, and he, on a month, gets his salary, goes to Western Union, and finds out that it will cost him $40 to send this money to his family in Bangladesh. Not just the bleeding money here, guys, but the sheer amount of delay and the bureaucratic paperwork on the receiving end are excruciating. Web3 can solve Salam's problem. Using a DApp, using a remittance DApp on his mobile, he can send the money in the form of cryptocurrency to his wife in Bangladesh in a second. It's fast, no loss, instant. Of course, there'll be some cost involved in the process due to the currency exchange and all, but those are very minor and usually are in cents. Cryptocurrencies are native to blockchain. This is very important. That means no one governs them. There is no bank or government has any control on cryptocurrencies. They are frictionless, they are borderless. Imagine a world with no banks sucking up people's money and no governments imposing restriction on public finance. That's the future of money, my friend. Number 4, impact areas. New ways of forming and running business. So blockchain and tokens are fundamentally changing the concept of ownership. Since every transaction in a blockchain is cryptographically stamped, as I told you earlier, it's very hard to hack and tamper these transactions. It's nearly impossible. Therefore, your ownership rights to digital assets are maintained. So if you create a piece of art, digital thieves will not be able to copy and sell it to other people. They will, of course, be able to copy it, but other people will know that this is not original. Blockchain and tokens are also introducing a new concept of partial ownership. So since everyone knows everyone in the blockchain, we don't need a governing agency as the middleman to arbitrate and validate the ownership of an asset. But there are more, and that's even more radical. Imagine a company where someone works the hardest but doesn't earn the most. It's a very common story, right? But not anymore in Web3. So now we have something called decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, where everyone owns a piece of the company and earns tokens based on the participation and contribution in growing and sustaining it. It's a radically new way of forming and running companies on Web3 with blockchain as the underlying structure. Investors are pouring billions of dollars on DAOs to form new DAOs and to offer new services on Web3. For example, Friends with Benefits is a DAO of web builders and artists, which is just a year-old company, and it has a market cap of 125 million USD as we speak. DAOs are beautiful. Why? It's self-governing. It benefits the competent and the majority. Number 5 impact area, social media. Social media is a very crucial part of our life these days. It has the power to transform how we interact and communicate with each other and form communities. But all social networks these days are somewhat limiting, and they are not democratic. Web3 changes the equation completely. It takes away the power of data from the platform and give it back to the people, to the individual. So no centralized company can own the data. Your messaging applications will be highly secure, and no one will be able to sit behind an admin panel looking into your private messages. My last point is banking. Ask anyone over here. They will tell you our current banking system is a mess. It's slow, it's inefficient, it's primitive, considering it's 2022. In Web3, there might be no banks. And even if there are, their nature will be so different from today that maybe we need a new term for them. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But it's going to happen. If you are an entrepreneur, I'm sure many of you want to be an entrepreneur someday. I would advise you to spend your time and energy on creating Web3 startups. Venture capital funding on blockchain startups has reached a staggering amount of 25.2 billion USD last year, which is up by 713% from 3.1 billion in 2020. That's the opportunity you should be going after. Just think of the decentralized alternatives of the current services we use, like decentralized blockchain versions of Facebook or Uber or Airbnb, and the funding will follow. We, our society and our government, need to catch up with this change. We have to start preparing ourselves for a time when decentralization might become a de facto standard of living. In 10 years from now, our voting systems might run on blockchain, meaning elections are guaranteed to be fair. For the first time in human history, technology and technology alone has reached a stage where it can challenge the very existence of centralized political and economic institutions. Institutions like governments, banks, and corporations. Web3 is showing us the hope, it's giving us the hope and showing us the dream of a world where there are justice, equality, and freedom for all. Welcome to this brave new world. Thank you.